My father's company was on the verge of bankruptcy and owed a lot of debt. Boris's family offered us an olive branch and they could provide funding for my dad's company. The condition was that I would marry Cameron, the youngest son of Boris's family. I heard that this condition was proposed by Cameron's mother, but Cameron himself disagreed and made a big fuss. But on the first day Cameron and I met, he called me his wife, sniffed my neck, and said, "Wife, you smell so good, can I kiss you?" Then he asked me, "Honey, can I tag you?" 01. Tony, if you don't want to, it's okay if mom and dad refuse. Don't feel stressed. We will always find a way. I looked at the fine lines at the corners of my mother's eyes and the white hair on my father's head. In just 1 month, they both seemed to have aged several years. Although they looked haggard, they still forced a smile to comfort me. They really have no other options, I know that. I shook my head. Dad? Mom? Who said I don't want to? Boris's family is very wealthy. Logically speaking, marrying into Boris's family is considered marrying up. It will be very prestigious if I tell others about it. Besides, the youngest son of Boris's family is very handsome. Anyway, I don't think it's a loss. You are such a naughty kid. We just feel sorry for you. You guys have been so kind to me. I can live to this age in health and happiness, all thanks to you too. Don't think too much. Just focus on getting through this difficult time for the company. After saying that, I walked up to you too, hugged you too, and then slipped away. I really don't care. It doesn't matter who I marry. Boris's family can save my father's company, so I have no objection. My parents have always respected me, treated me very well, and never forced me to do anything. Now that I can help share some of the burden at home, I am actually quite happy because at least they won't be so tired anymore. TSK, it seems that the youngest son of Boris's family doesn't like me. I heard that Cameron had a big fight with his family and even tried to run away from home. As a result, he was caught by his father as soon as he ran to the gate and has not been released yet. Anyway, we should just stay put until my dad's company gets better. If we can appease Boris's family, we should appease the youngest son. If we can't appease him, we have to appease him. After all, at this time, only Boris's family is willing to come out to help us. This marriage must be concluded. When I stepped into Boris's family compound, I couldn't help but feel nervous. However, the compound in front of me was not as luxurious as I imagined. It was quite simple and low-key. There were many violets planted in the yard. Seeing my curiosity, the housekeeper said, "Madam likes violets. These are planted by the young master himself." I didn't expect Cameron to be so filial. I nodded to the butler very understandingly and continued walking with him. As soon as I reached the door, I heard a voice from inside. "I can't get married. If you want to get married, go ahead and do it." Then a female voice sounded, "Son, why don't you listen to me? This Omega's pheromone match with yours is as high as 98.55%, and don't I know what kind of person you like? You have to trust your mother's judgment. I promise that when you see him, you will definitely like him." The voices must be Cameron and his mother. No wonder Boris's family made me and Cameron marry. It turns out that our pheromones are highly compatible. "Madam, young master, Tony is here," the butler said and left. I walked in and saw Cameron, a man with brown curly hair, sitting on the sofa with his arms crossed. Next to him was his mother. On both sides of the sofa stood 2 men in black, standing very straight, a bit like security guards. I pretended to be natural, forced a good smile, and greeted the lady, "Hello, Auntie." Cameron's mother smiled happily and said, "Oh, what a good child." She came over and took my hand. A faint scent of violets lingered around my nose. She led me to Cameron and stopped about a meter away. "Cameron, this is the Omega I was talking about, Tony." I actually heard a hint of anticipation in her tone. When I got closer, I saw that Cameron had a mole on the tip of his nose, long and curly eyelashes, and a pair of peach blossom eyes, but his eyes were fierce and he kept staring at me. It seemed that he really didn't like me. I pulled the corners of my mouth and smiled at him in a flattering way. "Hello, my name is Tony." Actually, I wanted to shake hands to express my friendship, but the distance was a bit far, and Cameron's mother held my hand tightly and looked at Cameron, who was sitting on the sofa. Cameron suddenly stood up, still staring at me fiercely, and then the strong smell of alcohol came to me, making my legs weak. I was shocked, thinking, was he going to come and beat me up? I endured the discomfort and quietly moved a step behind Cameron's mother. Cameron's mother glanced at the men in black, and then 2 men in black stepped forward, grabbed Cameron's arms and sandwiched him in between. Cameron, who was stuck in the middle, struggled for a few times, but found that he couldn't move. Then he turned his eyes away from me and turned to Cameron's mother next to me. He said angrily, "Mum." There was still a bit of helplessness on his face. Cameron's mother covered her nose and frowned. She said, "Control your pheromones and don't scare Tony." 03. The aroma of alcohol in the air faded a lot, and Cameron's mother turned around and said to me gently, "Tony, don't be afraid. Cameron didn't mean it, he just likes you too much," and he couldn't help being a little excited. "Oh my God, Lao Si, do you want to listen to what you are saying? He doesn't look like he likes me at all. He clearly wants to eat me alive." I laughed awkwardly and touched my nose. For my dad, I gave it my all. "It's okay, Auntie. I'm much better now." I pointed at Cameron and said, "Cameron seems to be uncomfortable. Why don't you let him go?" Cameron's mother didn't seem to expect me to say that. She was surprised and happy. Then she said to the man in black, "Let him go." I walked towards Cameron, looked up at him, rubbing my fingers together nervously, and said shyly, I like you too. Your pheromones smell good." Cameron raised the corners of his lips, lowered his head and leaned close to my ear, and said in a low voice, "Your face is so red." Then he moved closer, sniffed my neck, and said, "You smell so good, wife." I don't know whether his lips brushed against my neck intentionally or unintentionally. I instantly got goosebumps, like a monkey being teased, and my face flushed red. I resisted the urge to retreat and said, "That should be the smell of my pheromones." I heard a chuckle in my ear, and then Cameron stood up straight. He reached out and held my hand and said to Cameron's mother, who was laughing behind me, "Mom, I'm taking the person away." I suddenly became nervous. Where were they taking me? I didn't want to be alone with Cameron. I felt like something bad was going to happen. I turned around and looked at Cameron's mother for help, hoping that she could keep me. Unexpectedly, Cameron didn't even wait for Cameron's mother to reply. He forcibly turned my head back and led me upstairs. I only heard a voice from behind, "Cameron, be gentle with Tony. We have to register this afternoon." Before I could figure out what Cameron's mother meant by the first half of the sentence, Cameron had already taken me into a room and slammed the door shut. He pushed me against the door, put his arms around my waist, lowered his head and humped my shoulders. I felt him get close to my glands and smell them. It seemed that he really liked my pheromones. This is a good thing for me. It would be best if my pheromones can make him dependent on me, so that Boris's family will not go back on their word and my father's company can recover as soon as possible. So I secretly released a little pheromone. The head on my shoulder moved, and the hair brushed against my neck, which was a little itchy. I raised my hand to scratch it, but his other hand grabbed it. Then I heard him take a breath and said in a dull voice, "Do you usually treat others like this?" 04. I could feel Cameron's mouth very close to my gland. It was very dangerous. He was like a hunter, staring at his prey. As long as I answered yes, he would bite it in the next second. Although I didn't understand what he meant, out of my instinct to avoid danger, I shook my head and quickly denied, "No, I'll do this to you." Cameron laughed and touched my gland with his lips. I straightened my body. How could he kiss my gland with his mouth? The head left my shoulder and rested on my forehead. The lips that had just touched my gland were only a few centimeters away from my mouth. Then I heard him say in a coquettish tone, "Wife, I can't help it. Can I kiss you?" My eyes widened with disbelief, and I almost blurted out, "Of course not." But I held it back. I didn't dare to, because I was afraid that Cameron would be angry. The alpha in front of me was very patient and kept asking for my answer. He nuzzled my nose with his nose and continued to ask, "Is it okay, wife?" No, this is too unfair. My fingers curled up involuntarily and my bones felt numb. I PUA myself like crazy. Since I'm getting married, This kind of thing is inevitable in the future. I can't refuse it. It doesn't matter if I do it early or late. It's no big deal. I'll just take it as adapting to it in advance. I closed my eyes, my fingers nervously grasped the corner of Alpha's clothes, and my voice trembled uncontrollably, "Yes, yes." I couldn't see Cameron's expression, I only heard him say, "What should I do? I can't seem to control myself anymore." Then he held my head and kissed me, followed by a strong smell of alcohol. I obviously didn't drink any alcohol, but I felt drunk, my head was dizzy, and my body was hot. Could it be that smelling Cameron's alcohol-scented pheromones can make me drunk? In a daze, I heard Cameron's voice, "Open your mouth." I opened my mouth obediently, and he hooked my tongue. I seemed to be even more drunk, my body was getting hotter and hotter, I was anxious to vent, I licked Cameron's mouth. Cameron must have been drunk too, he kissed me so hard that I could hardly breathe, I was almost dying, I wanted to ask him to stop, but the words were always stuck in my mouth, making a whimpering sound. I pushed him hard, but he ignored me and kept kissing me. Just when I thought I was going to be kissed to death, he finally let me go. I suddenly returned to the water like a dying fish on the shore, taking deep gulps of air. "You're crying." Cameron held my face, wiped my tears with his fingertips, and pretended to kiss me again. "Still coming?" I turned my head away in fear. Seeing Cameron's upturned mouth drooping, I quickly explained in a soft voice, "Can you wait? I'm still a little out of breath." This is even more humble than going to work. Cameron didn't say anything, but just looked at me with interest. No one spoke. The room was so quiet that only my breathing could be heard. The atmosphere suddenly became awkward. I really wanted to open the door and run out. Someone could come and save me. I silently let my breathing slow down and tried to keep my voice as quiet as possible. Suddenly Cameron said, "Okay, stop panting." I was about to argue, but he said, "Honey, it's very hard for me to hold it in." Then he kissed me again until my mouth became numb. Then he carried me to the bed and asked me, "Honey, can I enter your genital cavity? Honey, can I tag you?" 05. Why can he ask so bluntly? Is he not ashamed? Why is it he who is asking the question but I am the one who feels ashamed? I really want to grab the quilt next to me and cover my head with it, even if I can suffocate until I pass out, so that I don't have to face it. I couldn't help asking him, "Why do you always ask? Just do whatever you want, no need to ask me." Anyway, it has come to this, one step more or one step less doesn't matter. He answered seriously, "Because it's my wife's first time, I want to get her consent." My heart skipped a beat and I hurriedly avoided his gaze. His eyes were so serious, like he was looking at his lover. I was moved by Cameron 1 second ago, and the next second, I realized that Cameron was not a human being. I cried until my voice was hoarse and my eyes were swollen, but he didn't let me go. I begged him to stop again and again, and he said aggrievedly, "But my wife's body won't let me go." That's because of his pheromones. At first, I was able to stick to my original intention, but later, my consciousness became blurred and the only thing in my mind was running. I had only taken a few steps with my trembling legs when the overwhelming smell of alcohol enveloped me from behind. I suddenly lost my strength, my legs went limp, and I fell to the ground. A pair of strong arms hugged me. Because of the pheromones, I involuntarily moved closer to the person behind me. The person behind me seemed dissatisfied and said, "Why are you running?" He circled my neck, got close to my gland, opened his mouth and bit it, and then injected pheromones frantically. Cameron is crazy. I'm dying. Faintly, I heard someone knocking on the door and then voices. "How's Tony? Is he still awake?" You kid, I've told you to be gentle with Tony. Omegas are meant to be loved. Look at what you've done to Tony. There's not a single good spot on his body. No matter how much you like him, you can't do this. If you scare Tony away, you won't have a wife. Mom, please keep your voice down. He is very tired these days. Let him sleep more. Now I know how painful it is. I couldn't hear clearly what came after that. 06. A monster was chasing me. I wanted to shout for help, but no sound came out of my throat. I ran as fast as I could. After a long time, I looked back and saw that the monster had turned into Cameron. I saw him slowly open his mouth and shout, "Wife." I jumped, then opened my eyes. As a result, when I opened my eyes, Cameron's face appeared in front of me. I screamed and stepped back. Seeing this, Cameron quickly held me and my hands down and said, "Don't move." I looked down and found that there was an 4 drip on the back of my hand. If Cameron hadn't pressed it in time, the needle would have been pulled out. Cameron saw that I had calmed down, and he asked with a hurt expression, "Am I that scary?" I muttered in my heart, "You are scarier than a monster." I didn't answer but asked, "What's wrong with me?" As soon as I opened my mouth, I found that my voice was very hoarse. He coughed unnaturally, "You are sick." Looking at his unnatural expression, I realized, was I being sent to the hospital? It's over, how can I face people from now on? I stared at Cameron in shame and anger. "You've gone too far." "Honey, I was wrong. I will be more restrained in the future. But the doctor said that part of the reason you couldn't handle it was because you didn't have enough physical strength and didn't exercise." I subconsciously retorted, "Impossible, I exercise regularly." My voice became smaller and smaller. "Honey, for your health's sake, I think you need to exercise more in the future." Cameron glanced at me and continued, "After all, I would feel bad if you fainted or got sick every time you did it. If I have to go to the hospital every time I do it, I don't want to live anymore." I nodded and said, "Okay then." Cameron came over and kissed me on the mouth and said in a good mood, "Honey, you are so good." "Cameron, why are you so sticky?" I looked around. I had just woken up and hadn't noticed. Isn't this Cameron's bedroom? There was a knock on the door and Cameron said, "Come in." The person outside the door walked in. He was a doctor wearing a white coat and gold-rimmed glasses. He removed the needle from me and said, "There's nothing wrong with your body. Just rest for a few days." Then he packed up and left. I asked in confusion, "Why does the doctor seem reluctant to approach me?" Cameron raised the corners of his lips and narrowed his beautiful peach eyes slightly, "Because you smell like me." I smelled it and it was true. I touched the gland at the back of my neck and saw a deep tooth mark. I was permanently marked by Cameron. It's hard to describe the feeling, it's just quite subtle. Cameron took off his shoes, lifted the covers and came in. He put his arms around me and kissed me again. I moved back and he came closer and continued to kiss me, asking me, "Why are you hiding from me?" I argued, "I didn't." I asked him, "When are we going to register?" He asked back, "Are you so anxious?" I nodded, "Yeah." Cameron saw through my thoughts. He pinched my cheek and said, "Your father has already paid the money. We will go to register when you are better. You are not fit to go out in this state." Which one am I? I wanted to get up and look in the mirror, but Cameron wouldn't let me get up. He also wanted to kiss me and touch me all over. I grabbed his hand and said, "No, the doctor told me to rest well." Cameron said shamelessly, "Wife, I just want to kiss and touch you, nothing else." It would actually be quite comfortable if Cameron hadn't kissed her for so long. Slowly, my consciousness became more and more blurred, and I closed my eyes and fell asleep. 07. It's so strange, it seems that people really can develop feelings for each other when they spend a long time together. I think I'm starting to like Cameron a little. I thought that was it between Cameron and me, but something unexpected happened. We had a car accident on the day we went to register. As we turned the corner, an uncontrolled car hit us and Cameron pulled me under him. There was a bang. It hurt so much, I have never felt such pain in my life. I wanted to open my eyes but I couldn't. My hands and feet were too weak. How is Cameron? Are we going to die? If we survive, I will be nice to Cameron, I swear. It was so noisy around me, with many people talking and the sound of an ambulance. I wanted to hear clearly, but I couldn't hear anything. I opened my eyes and squinted because of the bright light above my head. After I adjusted myself, I opened them again. The room was blindingly white. I swayed and remembered that Cameron and I had been in a car accident. This time we were really in the hospital. "Tony, you're finally awake." Mom sat by my bed with a worried look on her face. Why do I feel that she looks more haggard? I sat up and held my mother's hand. Don't worry, Mom. I'm fine. How's Cameron? He's still in a coma. Cameron protected me under him at the time, and he must have been hurt much more seriously than me. I'll go see him. I threw back the quilt and got out of bed, not wanting to wait even a moment. My mother held me back and refused to let me go no matter what. The more she stopped me from going, the more I felt something was wrong. I was anxious and said to her, "Mom, I'm really fine. Please let me go." My mother hugged me and cried, said sorry to me, and told me not to see Cameron anymore. I felt like my brain wasn't working anymore. What on earth was going on? I looked puzzled and asked, "Mom, what's going on?" 08. I was in a coma for 5 days and Cameron was in a coma for 5 days, but he was more seriously injured, and the car accident also aggravated his pheromone disorder. Cameron is sick. When he grows up, his pheromones are disordered and very unstable. Only the pheromones of an omega who is highly compatible with him can soothe him and make him like a normal alpha. The higher the degree of match, the more effective it is. If pheromone disorder persists for a long time, it will endanger the alpha's glands. In serious cases, the glands may have to be removed. This is also the reason why Cameron's mother found me. Cameron's mother searched for a long time before she found me, an omega whose pheromone match with his is over 95%. Before he found me, Cameron had been taking medication to stabilize his pheromones. However, medication is toxic, and long-term medication caused Cameron to sometimes lose control of his pheromones. During these 5 days, I was in a coma and could not release pheromones to comfort Cameron. On the day of the car accident, the doctor put us in the same ward. My pheromones were too weak while I was in a coma to have any effect at all. They also tried to extract my pheromones, but the amount was not enough. As luck would have it, an omega appeared the next day whose pheromone match with Cameron was 99.6%. The omega had been staying by Cameron's side these past few days, releasing pheromones to comfort Cameron. Such a high degree of match is something that even instinct cannot resist. This may be the only one in the world. God is really playing tricks on me. I wiped my face and whispered, "I know, Mom, I still want to go and see." My mother looked at me and finally didn't stop me and let me go. The hospital corridor seemed endless, so I quickened my pace and ran. I ran to Cameron's door panting and met Cameron's mother. The first time she saw me, she said sorry to me awkwardly. I'm really tired of hearing the 3 words, "I'm sorry." Why do you always have to say sorry to me? No one is sorry to me. It's just a transaction where both parties take advantage of each other. Boris's family treats me as a tool, and am I not also treating Boris's family as a tool? At the critical moment, I, as a tool, did not play any role, but Boris's family did not care. Not only did they not take back the money given to my family, they also paid for my medical expenses. To be honest, I have to thank Boris's family. I begged Cameron's mother, "Auntie, can I come in? I'll just take a look and leave." Cameron's mother hesitated, but finally nodded. She held my hand just like the first day we met and said kindly, "Of course." I opened the door and walked in. There was a man sitting inside, reading quietly. He looked up and was stunned when he saw it was me. Then he smiled gently, "Are you awake? It's that beautiful Omega. 09. I hummed and smiled at him. He didn't say anything else and continued to read with his head down. I slowly walked to the bedside. Cameron was lying quietly on the bed. His head was wrapped like a bun, with only his eyes, nose, and mouth exposed. His brown curly hair had been cut off, leaving only short stubble. His right calf was also wrapped in bandages and hung up. Cameron protected me very well. I only had a broken arm and some glass shards stuck in my body, which have been removed and are now forming scars that are almost healed. I wanted to touch his face, but my outstretched hand froze in midair, as if I was no longer qualified to do so. I sniffed and could hardly smell the alcohol. The room was filled with the sweet orange scent of Omega. As soon as I opened the door, I smelled it. It was too strong. Cameron was also full of the scent of that Omega. The alpha that marked me was stained with the scent of other Omegas, and I almost subconsciously released pheromones to cover up the orange scent of my own alpha. By the time I realized it, it was too late. The Omega was looking at me with a frown. I quickly retracted my pheromones and apologized to him. Sorry, I didn't mean it. I ran away feeling guilty like a thief. The moment I ran out the door, my tears fell uncontrollably. I cried and cursed, "What the hell is this bloody plot? Oh God, how could you play tricks on me like this? First come, first served, you know? Even if you let that Omega meet Cameron first, why did you have to make me get involved? They are the ones who have a happy ending, but I am the one who is sad. I can't blame anyone. What the fuck is going on?" I cried outside for a long time, and only returned to the ward after venting my tears. My mother saw my red and swollen eyes and hugged me with heartache. She sighed, and then let me lie back on the bed and have a good rest. After running around outside, I was quite tired, so I lay down and took a nap. When I woke up, I heard someone outside saying that Cameron had woken up. I sneaked over when my mom wasn't around. There were people inside and outside the room. I squeezed in and stood in a corner at the door. I looked inside and saw Cameron sitting on the bed with the doctor next to him performing various tests on him. "Hey, why are you standing here as a patient? Go back now." I don't know who said this behind me. I smiled awkwardly and was about to look away when Cameron suddenly turned his head and looked in my direction. Did he see me? The Omega standing next to Cameron also looked over here. He looked a little unhappy when he looked at me. I felt embarrassed and left. Every day after that, I would sneak to Cameron's door when no one was around and watch him until he saw me. I showed up at Cameron's place every day, hoping that Cameron still missed me. Some things and some people are obtained through struggle, so you have to try hard. But it didn't seem to have any effect. He never came to me. Actually, I really wanted to ask him why he didn't come to see me, but it was too late. The Omega watched me too closely. And once he caught me going there, he directly called the bodyguards to chase me away. I was about to be discharged from the hospital. Actually, I had no problems at all and could have gone home to recuperate, but I still stayed in the hospital for a few more days. My parents went to process my discharge procedures, and I sat on a bench outside waiting for them. There were not many people here, and it was quiet. "Why didn't you come yesterday?" I heard a familiar voice and looked up to see Cameron standing in front of me. His peach blossom eyes were staring at me intently. His bandages had been removed, but his leg was still a little limp. I haven't heard his voice for a long time and felt like crying. I rubbed my eyes and asked, "Is your leg not healed yet?" Seeing that I didn't answer the question, he narrowed his eyes and asked, "Why do you come to peek at me every day? Do you like me?" I looked at him in shock and said with difficulty, "You don't remember me?" Cameron lost his memory? But when he woke up that day, I clearly saw him calling everyone to visit his relatives. Could it be that he simply forgot about me? I rack my brains to see him every day, like a thief, but he doesn't remember me. No wonder he has no reaction at all when I hang around under his nose every day. You still have the nerve to ask me why I didn't go to see him? The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. I pointed at him and cursed, "You scumbag." He suddenly bent down, smelling something, and kept sniffing my body. After a while, he stared at me with dark eyes and said, "You seem to have my scent on you. It's been so many days, is there still any taste?" I held my coat tightly, moved to the side, and said unhappily, "You smelled it wrong." He took a step forward, grabbed my neck, turned up my collar, and rubbed my glands back and forth with his fingers. He tilted his head and smiled at me, saying in a very evil way, "Here, I bit it." The gland was a little painful when he pressed it, and I retorted, "No, it was another man who bit me." Cameron was still smiling, but it was a creepy smile. I bit his arm and he cried out in pain. I took advantage of his loose grip and ran away. This is the most ridiculous thing on earth. It's so ridiculous. I angrily raised my middle finger to the sky. What the hell? I could write a novel about my legendary life. After I got angry, I felt so weak again. I don't believe in God, but God wants me to believe in Him. There was the appearance of an Omega who was more compatible with me, and the scene where he remembered everyone but me. Everything that happened was pushing the plot forward for me to leave Cameron. Love whoever you want, I quit. Before leaving the hospital, I went to find Cameron's mother. I took out the jade pendant from my pocket, handed it to Cameron's mother, and said to her, "Auntie, this is the jade pendant Cameron gave me. Please help me return it to him." Auntie seemed surprised. She looked at the jade pendant in her hand and said, "Cameron, I actually gave this to you." "Tony." I heard my mother calling me, probably urging me to go home. I smiled at Cameron's mother and said, "Auntie, goodbye." I turned and walked away and heard Cameron's mother mutter, "Did I do something wrong?" "Cameron, goodbye." 11. Yesterday before leaving the hospital, I made an appointment to have the marks cleaned. I went to the hospital at 9 o'clock this morning, completed the examination, signed all the confirmation agreements without hesitation, and sat on a bench in the corridor waiting for my number to be called. Suddenly I heard a very loud voice, "Tony." The voice sounded very angry, and then a large species ran over and hugged me tightly and said with a hurt look on his face, "Wife, don't you want me anymore?" I was caught off guard by this look. The noise was really loud, and everyone's eyes were on us. I pushed Cameron awkwardly, and his hair was tickling my face, but he acted as if he didn't see it. He complained in a very aggrieved tone, "Wife, you're still pregnant with my baby." Then he kissed me. Not only the onlookers were shocked, I was shocked too. I was so shocked that I didn't care about being embarrassed. Then, the doctor who had just examined me came over and said, "Yes, Tony, you are pregnant. I just didn't have time to tell you because you left." I was so confused that I was speechless. "Tony." Cameron's mother also came. "Tony, it's my fault. I shouldn't have separated you." Cameron said he woke up because he smelled the scent of lychees. I didn't pay much attention to it at the time, but later I remembered that it was the smell of your pheromones. Cameron didn't remember you. I thought maybe it was God's will, so I didn't tell him about your existence. Cameron doesn't like Peyton, even though they are more compatible than you two. But out of consideration for Cameron's health, I always let him stay with Cameron and refused to let Cameron go out. The day you were discharged from the hospital, Cameron completely drove Peyton away. He asked me if you were his omega, and I knew that he had secretly gone to look for you. That jade pendant was given to him by his grandmother. It was very important to him. I didn't expect him to give it to you. It was at that time that I realized that I was wrong. I was extremely wrong. Now I am returning it to you. Tony, Cameron likes you very much. He liked you the first time he saw you. I was confused. I shouldn't have made the choice for him. I almost caused him to lose you. Ah, then haven't my tears these days been wasted? Cameron then said, "Yes, it's all my mom's fault. If she had told me earlier, I would have caught you." He winked at me, "Honey, can we go home?" It was really hard to resist the temptation of beauty, so I nodded and said, "Okay." Cameron hasn't remembered it yet. The doctor said he had temporary amnesia and he will remember it. It's just a matter of time. Of course, if I spend more time with him, he will remember it faster. For me now, it doesn't matter whether I remember Cameron or not. There are only a few days of memories in total, and there is still a long time to go in the future anyway.